Hello, this is the Tropic Pianist Gamers podcast, episode 18. It's called A Decade of Nintendo Community, and today I've got special guest James Bowden with me. Hi, James. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's James Bowden. People in the sort of UK Nintendo community might know me more by my online handle of Dalaganash. Currently, I'm a lead at Limited, who you may know back in the day, responsible for the likes of Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Viva Pinata, but more currently, I spend my days as a pirate doing lots of tweets about Sea of Thieves.
Brilliant. So I've got you on today because this month of August 2023, we're celebrating 10 years since Nintendo Players UK was first established as Street Pass UK. And you were the guy who established it in the first place. So would you like to tell me a little about your background and what brought you to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it makes me feel incredibly old that we're now at like 10 years since all of that was a thing. Um, but I guess, yeah, just to sort of run it back to then, um, 10 years ago, I was living in Manchester. I was just working in game. I was doing the typical gamer thing of trying to break journalism, but then working in retail in the day, writing at night. And I just remember that when you do that, when you do a lot of freelance, you just spend a lot of time online. And I remembered seeing that someone, Kerr Henderson, had like set up a meeting of people that played Nintendo up in Edinburgh. And I just saw it and I was like, that's amazing. He's just like, they've just all got together in the park and they're all just there to play games. I just remember seeing that and just putting out one of those cursory sort of like, things you do like on Twitter. And I was like, would anyone want something like this in Manchester? And I just, a couple of people, I think one of them was like Graham Bresford, who is still a huge part of that community in
Yeah.
Manchester now. Like he was one of the first people to just reply to me. Didn't follow me, but obviously saw the tweet and was like, "Yeah, I'd go." So I was like, "Right, I'm doing this. I'm going to put posters around." Because at the time, I think I hadn't been long living like in Manchester, and so there was definitely an element of like I'd moved there after university, so I was like, I could find some kindred spirits. I could find some people that are into the things I'm into by doing this. And like Nintendo had always been, especially multiplayer Nintendo had always been a real like pillar of my life growing up. Friday nights, Saturday nights around friends playing endless hours of Smash Brothers, endless hours of Mario Kart, like most of my birthdays in my sort of mid to late teens were very rock and roll, and it was a bunch of mates around my house, and it was just back to back
Yeah.
multiplayer. Monkey Ball, right? That's done. WarioWare, right? That's done. Mario Kart, F-Zero. That was my sort of dream evening. So that idea of hey, let's just meet up, let's just find some other people, get together, play some games. That was the real nexus of it. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to find some people and play some multiplayer Nintendo games. Um, and it just sort of helped that at the time, the 3DS was the system at the time. And there was also that idea, the technology called Street Pass. And for anyone listening that doesn't know what that was in very simple terms. If you walked past someone else who had a 3DS, they would exchange a little piece of data, and certain games had like elements that were enhanced by Street Pass, and there was actually a built-in thing of exchanging puzzle pieces and doing a little role-playing game, which was all built off Street Passes. So it's sort of a double whammy of I can find some people to play proper big multiplayer with and sort of facilitate a better environment for this sort of feature, which was huge in Japan, but never felt as utilized or like as realized like in the UK as you wanted it to. So it was sort of a double whammy of hey, let's play some multiplayer, find some people that also like Nintendo, and also really get the most out of these games.
Yeah, so you really have the core of community at your heart from early on there. The same as me in some respects, but obviously my story's like the year after because I actually met Manchester before I got started. So talking of Manchester, what was probably your favourite event that you hosted for Manchester?
My favorite event, I mean, the first event was incredible because that sticks in my mind because I was like, let's meet by a statue. And then it started raining very quickly and we all ran into a Costa and like the Costa was like, are you seriously taking up all this space? And we were like, yeah, it's fine. We'll buy coffee. But my like my standout early event, because I loved a lot of events. But the one that like sticks in my head from early on was the Animal Crossing New Leaf event
Oh
we
yeah.
did because that was the event. It was about our, I think it was our like third big event, if not fourth. But it was the one where suddenly a lot of people turned up. We'd had a respectable number before, and it was like this is a cool thing. We should do this because enough people turn up. And then we did Animal Crossing, and I think it was like 80 to 100 people, like all crammed into this really
That's a lot of
unique
people.
venue.
Yeah.
It was a really unique venue in Manchester as well. It was called Kyoto Lounge, and it was a like underground gaming venue, and it was just all these people sat around playing a game about paying your mortgage to a raccoon. It's not the game you expected to bring. Well, it's not the game gamers expected would bring everyone out, but Animal Crossing's always been a dark horse, like
Mm.
within Nintendo. I mean, everyone knows it's massive now because New Horizons did absolute like gangbusters during the pandemic. But like yeah, New Leaf brought a lot of people out and like playing Mario Kart tournament like with people sat up the stairs because it's the only space we could find to sort of separate everyone. Yeah, so that event really sticks in my mind for a lot of people about sort of idea, and I still speak to some people that was their first event. I still speak to people that came to that, and it was just great. Also, shout out to the Big Luigi event where everyone
Oh
dressed
yeah.
in green. That
And
was
that's
good.
where I met you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a hat. Dylan was in a green top. I think there was
Yes.
about 140 people for that because I remember that was one of your
Yeah.
records, wasn't it? And we met at
It
Piccadilly
was.
Gardens.
We did because we all met there and we did a big like green march down around
Yeah.
to the venue. That was really good fun. Yeah, ones where you could actually get your teeth into a really good theme. Like I
Yeah.
always enjoyed that.
I
Yeah.
base mine around all themes. I'm always themed every single month.
Mm.
Even 10 years later, I've still got a theme. But that big Luigi event, that was roughly when Street Pass UK started emerging because after
Yeah.
that event, I met you guys and you put me in touch with everybody else, and that's how the hub came to be. So
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about how the hub came to be?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was seeing all of these different groups popping up, and then it was just that feeling of like these groups are great, and you saw people traveling between them, and I just really felt an urge to try and create a connection where like you could more easily find those other groups. So if you were a big fan of this idea of going and meeting someone and meeting other people that like Nintendo, it just expanded the lens a
Yeah.
bit more. Because sure, there were some people that just wanted to go to Manchester. There were some people, but like those of us that were a bit older, we've got cars. It's fun to see that greater. Oh, there's a Liverpool group, and we can drive over there, and there's a Leeds group, and with yourself, there's a North Wales group, and I just I know it really appealed to me that was a really cool thing, and just slowly like being able to plot more and more groups on this map of the UK and sort of see this growing network of these really committed like Nintendo fans. Obviously, then there is my slightly competitive side where it was like, oh, you could do things where like we have the best at Smash Brothers from this group play off against the best at Smash Brothers from that group. And I think that was a little bit of me being like, yeah, Manchester, we've got some really good players. Like, I reckon it'd be really fun to play them off against other people. So there was, yeah, it was growing. It was seeing the full scope of that community that was growing around these meetups, because it wasn't something that was happening before Street Pass UK, or at least not to the broad sense that it was happening. Like, you'd get people meeting up to play competitive games, like specifically. But I think what was really special that we were trying to do with Nintendo players was that we were trying to make a community that was around like all types of Nintendo play, because it's very easy to assume that gamers, oh, you're all just competing all the time, but it wasn't just that. It was also trading Pokemon. It was also showing off your Animal Crossing house. It was also just talking about Zelda lore with other people that really loved Zelda.
Yeah.
It was trying to get all those different loves like under one roof, as I said, and again, getting more out of that little device, because the 3DS was so great. And the technology of the Street Pass, of sharing with other
Who
people,
missed the
was so
Street
great.
Pass?
It was the Street Pass. Street Pass was such a key part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just, I wanted to meet even more Nintendo fans.
Yeah, it was a great way, because I felt quite lonely myself being a gamer and not knowing anyone who gamed, because I was afraid to admit that I was a gamer for many years. But you already made a name for yourself as Delaganash with the top hat. So I'd love to know where the top hat came from.
This false memory that I had the top hat at the very first event. I did not have the top hat at the very first event, the Piccadilly event. I might have worn something, but it wasn't a top hat. The top hat weirdly was born, both that and the facial hair I used to have. So I don't
Yes,
have
I
it
remember you with
now.
the beard, yes.
Yeah. So both of those things were from our second event, because our second event was themed around Pokemon. And again, with that idea of trying to sort of encompass more than just one element of a games community, we had a competitive element. We had an in-game battling tournament, but we also, because it was around Halloween as well, we had a cosplay element. So we were come dressed up, like come do some Pokemon cosplay, do a Pokemon costume. And so actually the top hat and the facial hair came from me wanting to be a gentleman trainer. Like I was like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be a gentleman trainer, because they're always like dapper and they have Growlithe, and Arcanine's one of my favorite Pokemon. So I was like, I'm going to do that, and it stuck. And it just stuck. I don't really fully comprehend why, but it was just like whatever the next event was, just like, got to wear the top hat again. I think it just got enough compliments that I was like, I've got to wear the top hat again. And actually this top hat is similar to the one that I eventually wore in black. This is a purple version of that one, but the original top hat, this is the original top hat I wore.
Oh, wow.
At the Pokemon event, and it is cheap. It is not a premium top hat like this. It is battered and bruised. Very quickly, you live in Manchester, you live near our Flex Palace, you're going to be able to buy a top hat.
Yeah, I remember it well.
So I was able to upgrade pretty well. Yeah, but I feel like when you have a community, like stuff like that really helps, because you become, not that I'm iconic, but you become recognizable.
Oh, you were in the hub. You were in the hub. You were the legend in the hub.
But it's being recognizable, especially when you run a group like that,
definitely
really helps, because people can kind of zero in on you, and it just, yeah, it makes you easily recognizable. And it did a lot. Like I wore that top hat for many years, and like when I was working at Nintendo, I accepted that it was a trademark, and so I just kind of ran with it. I have retired it in the, yeah, I definitely think that the top hat was some very fun happenstance.
We'll be expecting you to wear a pirate hat, if anything, now, wouldn't we?
Yeah, pretty much. I need to get a proper big tricorn. Yeah.
So yeah, you had all those years with Street Pass UK behind you. You moved to Nintendo Community Manager, which is when I sort of became an admin. But you did do a few central events before you switched over. Do you have a favourite central event? Because I can remember a few, but I'd love to know which your favourite is.
I mean, I think my favourite was the Smash Brothers one that we did in Birmingham at the Custard Factory, just because that really felt like a true culmination of a nationwide event. Like, we were pulling people down from everywhere, and we had proper setups, and it was, people were representing where they came from. And I think we also tried to actually really stream it as well. So we were taking that idea and really trying to be like, no, we want to actually broadcast this and make sure that people at home can watch and join in and feel like they're part of the event. And I think that was really sort of next level event thinking. And it was great because we had so many admins there as well, so many representatives, and it felt like a proper culmination of what we were trying to achieve. or what I was trying to achieve with the network that we'd created. It was a proper like, but also within that we like there were rules defined, but it still felt like everyone's event was able to be their own event,
Yeah.
dictating too much. So yeah, I really, really loved the Smash Brothers event, even if it made me realize how bad at Smash Brothers I actually am. Some people are way too good.
Well, yeah, it was also thanks to you guys that we did North versus South in Aberystwyth as well.
Yes, that was an amazing event.
By the beach, but with North versus South only, with Wales, and yeah, people from Nottingham came to that. Yeah, we had a community where it was Smash and Mario Kart and Monster Hunter all under one roof, and everyone had such a good time by the beach. We are hoping to do a 10-year reunion for that.
Oh, that'd be
Fingers
good.
crossed. But yeah, that was 8 years ago.
It's really funny. Monster Hunter is like a franchise that I love now, and I don't think I would have loved it if I hadn't done like Nintendo players and stuff.
Yeah. There's
Because
games
I
that I've
tried
got
to,
into if it wasn't for Nintendo players I wouldn't have heard of or known
yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah. Because I remember I started trying to play Monster Hunter on the Wii and just didn't get into it. Just
Yeah.
couldn't stand it. And then I just remember playing it on 3DS, and actually playing with people that knew what they were doing. And I then ended up putting like 400 hours into Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. And I will now like routinely just buy every new entry in the series. But nothing's ever quite recaptured that just meeting up with mates like in the pub and playing. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, we've got our love of Mario Kart running all the way through our community. We're back with the Mario Kart League this year as well to hark back to our first year of running, which was 2014, I think, for our league that we do. It always brings people together. You had the Pokemon crew playing Mario Kart at one point, saying they didn't do racing games, but we got them on Mario Kart. It's amazing what community can pull together.
Well, it's like Pokemon players, they were always the hardest ones to like crack in terms of like, did you play anything else? No, I just play Pokemon. And it was like, oh, like, why don't you come play like this other game? And I do feel like the Nintendo, the groups that we had were felt much more like they could be, you could find people, you could get people to play other games, which I think is just like it's so cool to be able to just like introduce players to new games. That doesn't happen at like a dedicated Pokemon event. It doesn't happen at a dedicated Smash Brothers event. So I think that was like one of the biggest strengths of the Nintendo Players events.
Yeah, so obviously we're so many years past you leaving to work for Nintendo itself. Well, you were sort of in charge when you were in Nintendo, but you put 4 of us in charge of the actual running of the everyday stuff. And then you moved to Rare, of course, and a guy called Luke took over. Now, when you left, did you hope that a vision would carry on? Because we've got an ethos that we still stick by to this day. Did you see us carrying on in the same way that you'd hoped? And have we done that?
I think so. I mean, it's quite unfair because I left and then the whole world went into a lockdown pandemic, which doesn't really facilitate that whole idea of going out and meeting people in
Tetris
person.
99 was fantastic for that, though. The first week of lockdown, we got 34 people on Tetris 99 to get them together.
I mean, that's great. That's very good. But no, I definitely think like I especially think I keep seeing things on Twitter where it's like, you had the Mario Kart stuff not too long ago, and like, I still see the events popping up. And I was able recently just to, me and Beth were like, hey, we're going to Manchester, like we're going to loiter in our old haunt, or it's changed hands, but we're just we're just going to go to Pixel Bar. I think it's Pixel Bar. And still those people that we hung out with were like, yeah, we'll come. Yeah, we'll just come chill out and play some Nintendo games. And it was low, it was low key, but I still see the power of Nintendo Players UK of connecting people with that, just connecting people through that shared love of Nintendo. And it's not rooted just in competition. It's not rooted in having to one-upmanship that's in so many other communities that I see. And don't get me wrong, like that can work. I love Street Fighter. it totally, like, those people that love Street Fighter, that is the sort of community that they want to be in. But for me, the Nintendo players, the strength of them has always been that we can just meet up and, as I said, compare our Animal Crossing houses, or we can have a really hardcore game of Splatoon.
Yeah.
So the fact I still see the Splatoon tournaments happening, the fact I still see events themed around weird little indie games, I think the groups are absolutely still working to sort of the core principles that I saw as the strengths of just connecting people through a love of Nintendo and celebrating everything about Nintendo.
Yes. I'm glad I could carry it on for you. Anyway, thanks.
You're not playing enough Kid Icarus, though. You know.
Oh yes, I remember the Kid Icarus cards. We had like thousands of them to get rid of. Yeah. So if anyone wants to find you, how can they go about finding you?
Yeah. So I'm at. You'll have to excuse my silly name. I'm at Dalaganash on most channels. That's DALAGONASH. That's on pretty much any social channel you can think of, be it Twitter, be it Threads, be it Instagram. You will just mostly see pictures of geese though. But also, you can probably track me down on like LinkedIn with my actual name of James Bowden if you want a more serious conversation.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for being my guest today, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, and good luck with the future.
Thank you.